We were speaking of dharma as a comprehensive concept. We were also mentioning sadhya dharma and sadhana dharma. Sadhya dharma is the nature of the goal to be attained, and sadhana dharma is the kind of means that is required to be adopted for the sake of attaining that goal. Now, dharma is also divided into samanya and vishesha dharmas. Now, samanya dharmas are such dharmas as are to be followed by all and are conducive for the attainment of the final goal, whereas vishesha dharmas are tailor-made dharmas that can constitute the means that are required for the attainment of the goal by the particular individual, and therefore these two have to be pursued in concurrence. Now, samanya dharmas are such dharmas which should be pursued by one and all among the citizens. These have been listed very clearly in our texts. For example, Manusmriti says, Dhritihi kshama damosteyam shaucham indriya nigraha dhir vidya satyam akrodha dashakam dharma lakshanam. These 10 constitute the dharmas that should be pursued by everybody. So, dhriti is sustenance. So, that is to say, one pursues dharma in spite of even adverse circumstances. Kshama is patience, damaha is self-control, asteya is non-stealth, shaucham is purity, indriya nigraha is control of the sense organs, dhihi is intellect, and vidya is pursuit of knowledge, satyam is adherence to truth, and akrodhaha is freedom from anger. These 10 constitute the set of 10 dharmas that are required to be pursued by everybody. And as you can see, that these are also things that are good for the health of the society also, and therefore both for individual progress and for the progress of the society in general. So, these 10 qualities that need to be cultivated by each and every individual. Now, there is another saying which says, ahimsa satyam akrodha anrishamsyam damaha tatha arjavanchaiva rajendra nishchitam dharma lakshanam. So, these constitute another set of virtues that need to be cultivated, and you can also see that there are many things that are common to the previous list also. So, ahimsa is refraining from causing violence and pain to any other being. In fact, the word Hindu sometimes is given the etymology of himsaya duyate iti. The person who refrains from causing pain to others is a Hindu, and therefore ahimsa is refraining from causing any violence to others. So, non-violence is usually the rendering for ahimsa. But however, we have to note that, as Sriranga Mahaguru pointed out, when there are people who are against dharma, they need to be fought, and therefore they have to be subdued, and that fight itself constitutes ahimsa. But otherwise, we should not find pleasure in causing pain to others, and even if it is not for pleasure, even inadvertently too, we should not cause pain to others. That is ahimsa. And then satyam, akrodhaha are items that have already appeared in the previous list. Anrishamsyam is compassion, damaha is self-control, arjavam is being straightforward, and these constitute, so these 6 qualities constitute the feature of dharma. Now, even among these dharmas, there are certain dharmas which can be considered as paramount importance and certain dharmas which are somewhat lesser in importance. Yajnavalkya Smriti gives this list and points out this gradation as to which is the most important dharma and which is the less important one. So, it says, Ijyachara dama himsa tapaswadhyaya karmanam ayantu paramo dharmaha yad yogena atmadarshanam. So, there is worship of the Lord, Ijya and Achara. So, following a number of rules that are required for one's own anusthana and so on. Dhamma, Ahimsa, and tapas and swadhyaya. So tapas is being strict with oneself, and then swadhyaya is the study that is required for one's own pursuit, acquiring the proper knowledge for the attainment of the goal. And even though these are all important dharmas that are to be pursued by an individual, Yajnavalkya is very clear on one point, namely, ayantu paramo dharma, this constitutes the supreme dharma, namely, yad yogena atma darshanam, that through yoga one must get to know one's own self, and therefore getting to know oneself is what is to be pursued, and the means for that is yoga. So yoga constitutes the most important way and method to get to know one's own self. We know there is the Greek statement, so know thyself, as a fine epigram and an adage, but then the proper means for that and the proper concept also are explored in our country, so since times immemorial. And there is another statement which brings out the common pursuits that are required by all. So the list gives ahimsa, satyam, asteyam, shaucham, indriya nigraha, etam samasikam dharmam chaturvarne abravit manuhu. So for all the four varnas, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, so these virtues are necessarily to be cultivated, namely ahimsa, satya and asteya. In fact, you can see that some of these are items that occur in the yama and niyama of yoga, and therefore ahimsa, satya and asteya, as also shaucha and indriya nigraha. So these are samasikam dharma, means applicable in toto for all. So these are to be universally pursued by everybody, and therefore these constitute the common dharmas that need to be pursued. Now the question is, if the goal is to be the same, can the means be different for people? Now once again you can take the analogy of a journey. Now if a person has to reach Mysore, how does he do so? So do all need to take the same means of reaching Mysore? So obviously there are different ways of doing this. Now it all depends upon where you now are and what means are at your disposal. The means being the kind of money that you can spend and the kind of vehicle that you can afford or is available and so on. And therefore a person who is living very close by can just take a walk. The person living afar from the place may require an aeroplane, and those who are in the intermediate spots can take to a bus or go by train and so on. Thus, in spite of the goal being the same and in spite of everyone being a human being alone, it is not necessary that everyone take the same way or the same route. So persons from different spots have to reach the same destination, then naturally they will have to take different ways of transport and so on. In fact, a person who is coming from the west will have to travel eastwards, and the person who is situated to the east of Mysore will have to travel westwards. So apparently they are going in opposite directions, but they reach the same goal. Thus, there is this concept of what is called adhikari bheda in dharma. That is to say, what is fit for one, so does not fit for another. So one dress fits all is not something that obtains in the pursuit of dharma. So another analogy of the doctor and the patient may also be given here. People suffering from various diseases go to a doctor. The doctor is the same, their goal is the same, namely the attainment of full health, but each person is suffering from a different problem, and therefore the medicine has to be different. So even though the doctor is the same and the goal is the same and the condition of the patient is also in a way the same, namely illness, there are certain details to be looked into, and as per the details, the medicines that are prescribed have to be different. So the doctor cannot act in a very democratic manner and say that I will give the same medicine to everyone. And thus, this is not a democratic process. This is not where democracy functions. So in each case, this is a technical issue that needs to be solved by going into the technical details of the problem. And even while we travel in a bus, so the passengers cannot dictate to the driver as to which route he must take, and if they go on expressing different choices to be made, how can the driver reach the destination? And therefore, in all such cases, it is the technical man that can really devise the proper solution to the problem that is at hand. And that is why various methods have been devised in our Shastras. Now, there is a famous verse which shows the various means that are required for the attainment of the same goal. There is a famous verse, Trayi Sankhyaṁ Yoga Pashupati Matam Vaishnavamiti Prabhinne Prasthane Padamidamadav Pathyamiti Cha Ruchinam Vaichitriya Drijakutila Nana Pathajusham Nranam Eko Gamyastvasi Payasam Arnavaiva. So, there is the Vedic way, there is the Sankhyan way, there is the Yoga way, there is the Pashupata way, there is the Vaishnava way, and the Shakta way, and so on. So, these are all various methods that are prescribed for the attainment of the same goal, and that is because of two primary reasons, namely Ruchi Vaichitriya and then Prakriti Bheda. That is to say, the nature of each person is different and the taste of each person is different. So, depending upon the capacity of the person and depending upon the taste of the person, the method prescribed can differ, and therefore, there are numerous solutions for the same problem. So, depending upon the person who is seeking the solution and his own condition at the point that he is. And Kalidasa beautifully says, Bahudha pyagamair bhinnaha panthana siddhi hetavaha tvayyeva nipatant yogaha janhaviyaha ivarnave. Now, there are various streams of the river Ganga, and they all reach the ocean, but not exactly through the same route, and therefore, the goal is the same, but the path can be different. Even so, dharma, the final goal of dharma is the same, but the path dharma takes in the case of each individual can be different. Now, is dharma for Bharata only? This question has been taken up and answered by Sri Sriranga Mahaguru. He says, Bharatakke matra dharma itararige beda endenu illa. So, it shows that it is something that is required for all human beings, and therefore, for all human beings to get to know their own self ultimately, or to know the Supreme Brahman, the source of the world, then the method that is to be followed is required for everyone. And he shows the supreme power and position of dharma. So, he says, Yava divya shaktiyu srishtiyalli yellavannu dharisi biddavarannu ಬೀಳುವವರನ್ನು ಬೀಳುತ್ತಿರುವವರನ್ನು ಮೇಲಕ್ಕೆ ಎತ್ತಿ ಉದ್ಧಾರ ಮಾಡಬಲ್ಲುದೋ ಆ ಶಕ್ತಿ ವಿಶೇಷವೇ ಧರ್ಮ ಮತ್ತು ಅದನ್ನು ಉಳಿಸಲು ಮಾಡುವ ಕ್ರಿಯೆಯೂ ಧರ್ಮ, which is to say that dharma is the principle, so which is the one that uplifts those who are falling, those who are fallen, and those who are going to fall. So, every one of these can be uplifted by the force of dharma, and the methods that are pursued for the sake of this is also dharma. He gives the beautiful analogy of the seed and its growth. Now, ಬೀಜಕ್ಕೆ ಬೆಳೆಯುವುದು ಧರ್ಮ, ಹಾಗೆ ಬೆಳೆಸುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಪೋಷಕವಾದ ನೀರೆರೆಯುವ ಕ್ರಿಯೆಯೂ ಧರ್ಮವೇ. Now, there is this dharma or property of growing, so already in the seed. Now, the farmer or the gardener who wants the seed to grow and bear fruit has to pursue a number of actions. So he has to tend the plant and with care, and supply water at proper times and in proper proportion, and proper fertilizers and so on. And this action of tending the plant with care is also an act of dharma. And therefore, finding out the nature of the person, the ability of the person, the taste of the person, and so on. So, ensuring that the final goal is ultimately achieved by the individual, all these acts constitute dharma. And therefore, it is Sriranga Mahaguru who has very clearly pointed out the two meanings of dharma as being the nature of something or the essential property of something, and the action leading to the attainment of the highest goal. So, these two meanings had nowhere been bridged as well earlier by any other scholar, and therefore, the consummation of dharma in the final goal to be achieved has been very well illustrated in this analogy. In sum, Sanatana Dharma shows that it is the pursuit of the eternal principle that governs the entire universe, and the various ways and means that individuals have to adopt in order to attain that goal. And as the problem is one that cannot be wished away, the solution is also something that is to be pursued avidly, and therefore all talk of destroying dharma is nonsensical. It is as though one can as well destroy the laws of nature that are discovered by science. So, simply because one comes to hate science, and therefore, it is only with the proper pursuit of knowledge and an understanding of the means and the ends that the understanding of Sanatana Dharma is possible, which makes our life a life of joy, pleasure and attainment here and hereafter. Namaskar.